Cheerleading is one of the few sports where grit, raw talent, and community can take you to the top. Or at least that's how it used to be. Today, things are a lot different. We're seeing a lot of instances where teams no longer rely on top-notch training and homegrown talented athletes. Top-tier teams are becoming harder to beat, not because they're training harder, but because the playing field isn't level anymore. Welcome back to my channel, Deep Dive Cheer, where we explore pressing topics in the cheer world and dissect them piece by piece. Today, we're diving into how the rise of powerhouse gyms and strategic division placements are making it harder and harder for under-resourced teams to compete. I want to start this off by saying I am in no way trying to undermine the hard work each and every athlete puts into their craft on the teams that I'm about to discuss. This is mostly, at least for the first team I'll be mentioning, a critique on how the playing field has become more and more unfair as the years have gone by. Anyways, let's start with Max Senior Stars.
I think you underestimate the power of the dark side. Max Senior Stars, we can't dark side is for revenge. Cutthroat energy, no time for positivity. It's a war going on and you talk about what? Please spare me.
Max Senior Stars is an all-star cheerleading team from Utah that has been a team for over 15 years. While they didn't see major success in their earlier years as a team, they became widely recognized from 2021 forward. They were in the small COA division, competing against teams like Brandon Senior Black, KC Cheer Fierce 5, and other incredible competitors. In 2022, Max Senior Stars took home a world championship title, cementing their place as a major contender in the cheerleading world. In 2023, they got second place to KC Cheer Fierce 5 by just 2 points, and in 2024, they got second place to Brandon All-Star Senior Black by just 0.05. That's barely a wobble. Seeing as they had a streak of globing at Worlds and were proving themselves to be as competitive as could be, everyone expected them to continue to be a force to be reckoned with within the small COA division. But in 2024, just after the 23-24 season going into the 24-25 season, something unexpected happened. Instead of returning to the same division, Stars announced that they'd compete in the Limited Division, a category specifically designed to support gyms with fewer resources and access. Now, officially, they were eligible. They no longer had a second Worlds team, which technically put them within the rules. But many in the cheer community felt like this was a loophole, a team with a history of titles dropping into a division meant to help the underdogs get a fighting chance. And just as expected, Senior Stars swept the division. They won every single competition in the 2025 season, hitting 0 at every single competition. They were the only team to have a 0 deduction season this past year. Not even any of the non-limited teams had a 0 deduction season. At Worlds, they beat LACF Gold, a cheer team from a smaller gym in Louisiana, by 7 points. 7. In a division where the margin is usually a lot closer. This raises a huge question. If stronger teams start jumping into the divisions meant for underprivileged teams, are we really supporting the teams who need it most? I don't think so. Moving on, the next team I'm going to talk about is not necessarily at fault, but I do feel it's an important point. I want to talk about Cheer Extreme SSX. While there's plenty of conversation surrounding Senior Stars' switch to Limited, SSX is widely praised and rarely criticized. But don't worry, what I'm about to say isn't necessarily a criticism. And I know, as soon as I said it, a lot of your heads perked up. But before you comment angrily criticizing what I have to say about the beloved SSX, I acknowledge that the disparity I'm about to get into is not their fault. Let's get into it. Cheer Extreme SSX, a team so iconic they've practically become cheer celebs. With a history of high finishes and a fan base that spans continents, SSX has grown into one of the most recognizable and influential teams within the sport. With that popularity comes power, and with that power, access. SSX regularly brings in talent from out of state, and in some cases internationally. The result? A super team that's often unbeatable. Not just because they train hard, but because they have access to the very best athletes out there. A lot of people might bring up the fact that they lost in 2022 and 2023 to a team called Ice Lady Lightning. But while that's true, you cannot help but notice the amount of international and out-of-state athletes they've brought in since then. After winning in 2024, their 2025 roster consisted of less and less homegrown athletes. Around 8 out of 22 of their 2025 Worlds competing athletes were originally from the Cheer Extreme gym. This isn't a hit piece, though. SSX plays within the rules, and the athletes they attract are incredibly talented, but the ripple effect cannot be ignored. Smaller and less established gyms can't pull in this kind of talent. They're left developing their own athletes from scratch and often can't compete with the resources, reputation, or visibility that SSX has. Take Ice Lady Lightning and Woodlands Elite Generals, for example, two teams in SSX's division. At least one of them still is. An overwhelming majority of athletes on both of those teams were homegrown athletes whose talents were fostered by the gyms they compete with. In 2025, Ice Lady Lightning made the decision to switch divisions, leaving Generals and SSX among the few long-standing rivals still vying for the top. At Worlds this year, SSX outscored Generals by a staggering 7 points, a margin that raises real questions about whether the traditional, locally grown teams can still keep up in a field increasingly dominated by all-star recruiting and nationwide scouting. Let's get into why I'm telling you all of this. It's no secret that cheerleading has always been a pay-to-play sport. But now, the gap between the haves and the have-nots is growing. When powerhouse programs enter protected divisions or stack their rosters through nationwide recruitment, the community starts to ask, is this still a fair fight? The underdog story is what made this sport exciting, watching a small gym take down a titan. But if we keep widening the gap, how long before those stories stop happening altogether? But let's zoom out a bit. These aren't just isolated issues, they're symptoms of a much bigger problem. Cheerleading lacks guardrails. In most competitive sports, you'll see structures in place to protect fairness. Think weight classes in wrestling, recruitment limits in NCAA sports, or even salary caps in professional leagues. But in cheer, we're working with a system where money, exposure, and prestige create massive problems and competitive advantages, with almost no checks and balances. So when gyms like Max drop into divisions like Limited, or when mega programs like Cheer Extreme build rosters with the best of the best from across the country, what happens to the small gyms? The ones whose rosters are made up of kids who just love the sport and can't afford to travel or move or pay thousands of dollars in monthly fees. Those kids are just as important, work just as hard, and are simply victims to this flawed system. Their chances of standing on the same podium as the powerhouses are getting slimmer and slimmer as the years go by. The scariest part about it all is that it's all technically legal. The rules allow it, the score sheets don't penalize it, and the main organizations running competitions in most cases reward it. But just because something is legal doesn't mean it's ethical, or in the spirit of what competitive divisions are supposed to be about. Let me be clear again. This isn't about blaming athletes. It's not about saying senior stars or SSX don't deserve to win. The work they've put in is real. But what we have to start questioning is how we define fairness in cheerleading and who these divisions are really serving. As much as I love watching flawless routines and stacked tumbling passes, I love watching the underdog win even more. That's the heart of this sport. That's the moment that makes all of the hours in a hot gym worth it. If we don't protect that possibility, if we don't ask hard questions about how the divisions are structured, how recruitment is managed, and how we define eligibility, then we're not just losing fairness, we're losing the soul of cheerleading. We need to start demanding a change in regulations from organizations like USASF. We can push for reforms to division eligibility, especially in limited and small gym categories. Maybe that means redefining limited to consider previous performance, not just gym size. Maybe, even, it means creating restrictions to athlete transfers or age-outs. Because here's the truth. The cheerleading world is watching. Athletes see who gets rewarded. Coaches see what strategies win. And younger teams, they're learning that if you want to stand a chance, you either need to break the bank or find a loophole. That's not the sport that I fell in love with, and I don't think it's a sport that you want to be a part of either. At the end of the day, it isn't all about the medals or who hits zero at the most prestigious competitions. Are we creating an environment where every athlete feels like they have a shot, no matter their zip code? Or are we telling kids that unless they can afford to move, switch gyms, or get scouted, they'll always be playing catch-up? The same thing goes for coaches. If losing starts to become a little too familiar, despite your previous achievements, is it acceptable to just move into a division where smaller, less privileged gyms compete? I want to know what you think. Do you think it's fair game as long as the rules aren't broken, or do you think cheers should put stricter guardrails in place to protect smaller programs? Should divisions like Limited be more tightly regulated to ensure their purpose is preserved? Please leave any opinions, thoughts, or other comments you might have in the comment section below. Also, if you have any topics you'd like to suggest, I'm very open to taking suggestions in the comments as well. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.